Hello, Cardinals, and welcome to our next installment of Beloved. The last of the Sweet Home Men, so named and called by one who would know, believed it. The other four believed it too once, but they were long gone. The sold one never returned, the lost one never found. One he knew was dead for sure, and one he hoped was, because butter and clabber was no life or reason to live it. He grew up thinking that, of all the blacks in Kentucky, only the 5 of them were men. Allowed, encouraged to correct Garner, even defy him, to invent ways of doing things, to see what was needed and to attack it without permission. To buy a mother, choose a horse or a wife, handle guns, even learn reading if they wanted to. But they didn't want to, since nothing important to them could be put down on paper. Was that it? Is that where the manhood lay? In the naming done by a white man who was supposed to know? Who gave them the privilege not of working, but of deciding how to? No? In their relationship with Garner was true metal. They were believed and trusted, but most of all, they were listened to. He thought what they said had merit, and what they felt was serious. Deferring to his slaves' opinions did not deprive him of authority or power. It was school teacher who taught them otherwise, the truth that waved like a scarecrow in rye. They were only Sweet Home men at Sweet Home. One step off of the ground and they were trespassers among the human race. Watchdogs without teeth, steer bulls without horns, gelded workhorses whose neigh and whinny could not be translated into a language responsible humans spoke. His strength had lain in knowing that schoolteacher was wrong. Now he wondered. There was Alfred, Georgia. There was Delaware. There was Sixo, and still he wondered. If schoolteacher was right, it explained how he had come to be a rag doll, picked up and put back down anywhere, any time by a girl young enough to be his daughter, fucking her when he was convinced he didn't want to. Whenever she turned her behind up, the calves of his youth, was that it? Cracked his resolve. But it was more than appetite that humiliated him and made him wonder if schoolteacher was right. It was being moved, place where she wanted him, and there was nothing he was able to do about it. For his life, he could not walk up the glistening white stairs in the evening. For his life, he could not stay in the kitchen, in the keeping room, in the storeroom at night. And he tried. Held his breath the way he had when he ducked into the mud, steeled his heart the way he had when the trembling began. But it was worse than that, worse than the bloody eddy he had controlled with a sledgehammer. When he stood up from the supper table at 124 and turned down the stairs, nausea was first, then repulsion. He who had eaten raw meat barely dead, who under plum trees bursting with blossoms had crunched through a dove's breast before its heart stopped beating. Because he was a man, and a man could do what he would. Be still for 6 hours in a dry well while night dropped. Fight raccoon with his hands and win. Watch another man, whom he loved better than his brothers, roast without a tear, just so the roasters would know what a man was like. And it was he, that man, who had walked from Georgia to Delaware, who could not go or stay put where he wanted to in 124. Shame. Paul D. could not command his feet, but he thought he could still talk, and he made up his mind to break out that way. He would tell Setha about the last 3 weeks, catch her alone coming from work at the beer garden she called a restaurant, and tell it all. He waited for her. The winter afternoon looked like dusk as he stood in the alley behind Sawyer's restaurant, rehearsing, imagining her face, and letting the words flock in his head like kids before lining up to follow the leader. Well, this is not the, a man can't see, but, listen here, it ain't that, it really ain't. Oh, Garner, what I mean is, it ain't a weakness, the kind of weakness I can fight, 'cause something's happening to me, that girl's doing it. I know you think I never liked her, know how, but she's doing it to me, fixing me, Setha. She's fixed me, and I can't break it. What? A grown man fixed by a girl? But what if the girl was not a girl, but something in disguise? A low-down something that looked like a sweet young girl, and fucking her or not was not the point. It was not being able to stay or go where he wished in 124. And the danger was in losing Setha because he was not man enough to break out. So he needed her, Setha, to help him, to know about it, and it shamed him to have to ask the woman he wanted to protect to help him do it. God damn it to hell. Paul D. blew warm breath into the hollow of his cupped hands. The wind raced down the alley so fast it sleeked the fur of 4 kitchen dogs waiting for scraps. He looked at the dogs, and the dogs looked at him. Finally, the back door opened, and Setha stepped through, holding a scrap pan in the crook of her arm. When she saw him, she said, "Oh," and her smile was both pleasure and surprise. Paul D. believed he smiled back, but his face was so cold he wasn't sure. "Man, you make me feel like a girl coming by to pick me up after work. Nobody ever did that. You better watch out. I might start looking forward to it." She tossed the largest bones in the dirt rapidly so the dogs would know there was enough and not fight each other. And then she dumped the skins of some things, heads of others, and the insides of still more things, what the restaurant could not use and she would not, in a smoking pile near the animals' feet. "Got to rinse this out," she said, "and then I'll be right with you." He nodded as she returned to the kitchen. The dogs ate without sound, and Paul D. thought they at least got what they came for. And if she had enough for them... The cloth on her head was brown wool, and she edged it down over her hairline against the wind. "You get off early, or what?" "I took off early." "Anything the matter?" "In a way of speaking," he said, and wiped his lips. "Not cut back?" No, they got plenty work. I just... "Setha, you won't like what I'm about to say." She stopped then and turned her face toward him and the hateful wind. Another woman would have squinted or at least teared if the winds whipped her face as it did Setha's. Another woman might have shot him a look of apprehension, pleading, anger even, because what he said sure sounded like part 1 of goodbye. "I'm gone." Setha looked at him steadily, calmly, already ready to accept, release, or excuse an in need or trouble man. Agreeing, saying okay, all right in advance, because she didn't believe any of them, over the long haul, could measure up. And whatever the reason, it was all right, no fault, nobody's fault. He knew what she was thinking, and even though she was wrong, he was not leaving her, would never. The thing he had in mind to tell her was going to be worse. So when he saw the diminished expectation in her eyes, the melancholy without blame, he could not say it. He could not say to this woman who did not squint at the wind, "I'm not a man." "Well, say it, Paul D., whether I like it or not." Since he could not say what he planned to, he said something he didn't know was on his mind. "I want you pregnant, Setha. Would you do that for me?" Now she was laughing, and so was he. "You came by here to ask me that. You one crazy-headed man. You right, I don't like it. Don't you think I'm too old to start all that over again?" She slipped her fingers in his hand for all the world like hand-holding shadows on the side of the road. "Think about it," he said. And suddenly it was a solution, a way to hold on to her, document his manhood, and break out of the girl's spell all in one. He put the tips of Setha's fingers on his cheek. Laughing, she pulled them away, lest somebody passing the alley see them misbehaving in public, in daylight, in the wind. Still, he'd gotten a little more time, bought it, in fact, and hoped the price wouldn't wreck him, like paying for an afternoon and the coin of life to come. They left off playing, let go of hands, and hunched forward as they left the alley and entered the street. The wind was quieter there, but the dried-out cold left behind kept pedestrians fast moving, stiff inside their coats. No men leaned against door frames or storefront windows. The wheels of wagons delivering feed or wood screeched as though they hurt. Hitched horses in front of the saloon shivered and closed their eyes. 4 women, walking 2 abreast, approached, their shoes loud on the wooden walkway. Paul D. touched Setha's elbow to guide her as they stepped from the slats to the dirt to let the women pass. Half an hour later, when they reached the city's edge, Setha and Paul D. resumed catching and snatching each other's fingers, stealing quick pats on the behind, joyfully embarrassed to be that grown up and that young at the same time. Resolve, he thought. That was all it took, and no motherless gal was going to break it up. No lazy, stray pup of a woman could turn him around, make him doubt himself, wonder, plead, or confess. Convinced of it, that he could do it, he threw his arms around Setha's shoulders and squeezed. She let her head touch his chest, and since the moment was valuable to both of them, they stopped and stood that way, not breathing, not even caring if a passer-by passed them by. The winter light was low. Setha closed her eyes, and Paul D. looked at the black trees lining the roadside, their defending arms raised against attack. Softly, suddenly, it began to snow, like a present come down from the sky. Setha opened her eyes to it and said, "Mercy." And it seemed to Paul D. that it was a little mercy, something given to them on purpose to mark what they were feeling so they would remember it later on when they needed to. Down came the dry flakes, fat enough and heavy enough to crash like nickels on stone. It always surprised him how quiet it was. Not like rain, but like a secret. "Run," he said. "You run," said Setha. "I've been on my feet all day." "Where I been? Sitting down?" And he pulled her along. "Stop, stop," she said. "I don't have the legs for this." "Then give 'em to me," he said. And before she knew it, he had backed into her, hoisted her on his back, and was running down the road, past brown fields turning white. Breathless at last, he stopped, and she slid back down on her own 2 feet, weak from laughter. "You need some babies, somebody to play with in the snow." Setha secured her headcloth. Paul D. smiled and warmed his hands with his breath. "I sure would like to give it a try. Need a willing partner, though." "I'll say," she answered. "Very, very willing." It was nearly 4 o'clock now, and 124 was half a mile ahead. Floating toward them, barely visible in the drifting snow, was a figure. And although it was the same figure that had been meeting Setha for 4 months, so complete was the attention she and Paul D. were paying to themselves, they both felt a jolt when they saw her close in. Beloved did not look at Paul D. Her scrutiny was for Setha. She had no coat, no wrap, nothing on her head, but she held in her hands a long shawl. Stretching out her arms, she tried to circle it around Setha. "Crazy girl," said Setha. "You the one out here with nothing on." And stepping away and in front of Paul D., Setha took the shawl and wrapped it around Beloved's head and shoulders, saying, "You got to learn more sense than that." She enclosed her in her left arm. Snowflakes stuck now. Paul D. felt icy cold in the place Setha had been before Beloved came. Trailing a yard or so behind the women, he fought the anger that shot through his stomach all the way home. When he saw Denver silhouetted in the lamplight at the window, he could not help thinking, "And whose ally are you?" It was Setha who did it. Unsuspecting, surely, she solved everything with one blow. "Now, I know you're not sleeping out there tonight, are you, Paul D.?" She smiled at him, and like a friend in need, the chimney coughed against the rush of cold shooting into it from the sky. Window sashes shuddered in a blast of winter air. Paul D. looked up from the stew meat. "You come upstairs where you belong," she said, "and stay there." The threads of malice creeping toward him from Beloved's side of the table were held harmless in the warmth of Setha's smile. Once before, and only once, Paul D. had been grateful to a woman. Crawling out of the woods, cross-eyed with hunger and loneliness, he knocked at the first back door he came to in the colored section of Wilmington. He told the woman who opened it that he'd appreciate doing her woodpile if she could spare him something to eat. She looked him up and down. "A little later on," she said, and opened the door wider. She fed him pork sausage, the worst thing in the world for a starving man, but neither he nor his stomach objected. Later, when he saw pale cotton sheets and 2 pillows in her bedroom, he had to wipe his eyes quickly so she would not see the thankful tears of a man's first time. Soil, grass, mud, shucking, leaves, hay, cobs, seashells, all that he'd slept on. White cotton sheets had never crossed his mind. He fell in with a groan, and the woman helped him pretend he was making love to her and not her bed linen. He vowed that night, full of pork, deep in luxury, that he would never leave her. She would have to kill him to get him out of that bed. 18 months later, when he had been purchased by North Point Bank and Railroad Company, he was still thankful for that introduction to sheets. Now he was grateful a second time. He felt as though he had been plucked from the face of a cliff and put down on sure ground. In Setha's bed, he knew he could put up with 2 crazy girls, as long as Setha made her wishes known. Stretched out to his full length, watching snowflakes stream past the window over his feet, it was easy to dismiss the doubts that took him to the alley behind the restaurant. His expectations for himself were high, too high. What he might call cowardice, other people called common sense. Tucked into the well of his arm, Setha recalled Paldy's face in the street when he asked her to have a baby for him. Although she laughed and took his hand, it had frightened her. She thought quickly of how good the sex would be if that's what he wanted, but mostly she was frightened by the thought of having a baby once more. Needing to be good enough, alert enough, strong enough, that caring again. Having to stay alive just that much longer. Oh Lord, she thought, deliver me. Unless carefree, mother love was a killer. What did he want her pregnant for? To hold on to her? Have a sign that he passed this way? He probably had children everywhere anyway. 18 years of roaming. He would have had to have dropped a few. No. He resented the children she had, that's what. Child, she corrected herself. Child plus beloved, whom she thought of as her own. And that's what he resented. Sharing her with the girls. Hearing the three of them laughing at something he wasn't in on. The code they used among themselves that he could not break. Maybe even the time spent on their needs and not his. They were a family somehow, and he was not the head of it. Can you stitch this up for me, baby? Soon as I finish this petticoat. She just got the one she came here in, and everybody needs a change. Any pie left? I think Denver got the last of it. And not complaining, not even minding that he slept all over and around the house now, which she put a stop to this night out of courtesy. Setha sighed and placed her hand on his chest. She knew she was building a case against him in order to build a case against getting pregnant, and it shamed her a little. But she had all the children she needed. If her boys came back one day and Denver and Beloved stayed on, well, it would be the way it was supposed to be, no? Right after she saw the shadows holding hands at the side of the road, hadn't the picture altered? And the minute she saw the dress and shoes sitting in the front yard, she broke water. Didn't even have to see the face burning in the sunlight. She had been dreaming it for years. Paldy's chest rose and fell under her hand.